After having time to review my life and fast forward, I decided that it was prime time to make some drastic changes. Well, you know, I had a few documentaries under my belt and a couple of Gilla nominations for my stellar attempts at novella fiction. One afternoon, while I was at the height or depth of these feelings of profound inadequacy, I received a telephone call from a mysterious, windy-voiced woman. She said she had a proposition for me. Naturally compelled and intrigued, I agreed to meet with her and discuss this proposition. We decided upon a meeting place, and she told me not to worry because I would recognize her at once. I couldn't imagine how I would, but nevertheless I was able to pick her out of the crowd. She was tight-limbed, smaller than I had imagined, and quite bland. She wasted no time with me in formalities or setup. She said quite flatly, "I want to hire you as an assassin." She stared at me blankly and just waited for my response. I must admit, she did knock the wind out of me. Naturally, at first I was shocked and disgusted with her flatly announced proposal, yet there was something about her. Perhaps it was her manner or her emptiness. Whatever it was, she seemed at once very familiar to me. Now, don't get me wrong, I've never laid eyes on the woman before in my life. Nevertheless, I was overcome with a sense of purpose and clarity which I've been seeking all of my life. Somehow my senses became instantly sharpened, and I felt that we were being observed. With that, she was gone. I glanced around me, once again being aware of watchful eyes. I gathered myself to go, feeling it unwise to return home. I went instead to a reference library and concealed myself within the stacks. Shielded by an alphabetical archaeology of collected wisdom, bound in leather, I opened the envelope. Inside it was a picture, color, 4x5. It was a photograph of my ex-fiancé. I flipped the photo and read the terms outlined on the back. Nowhere within the terms could I find any possible explanation for why this woman would want my ex-fiancé dead. Now, you must believe me when I tell you that I have no sort of personal grudge or malice towards my ex-fiancé at all. He is really very charming. Yet I can't explain whatever came over me when I read the terms of that contract. With each read, I became obsessively inspired. Thrilled, in fact. There was something incredibly seductive about this kind of power dynamic. This time, for the first time in my life, I would be the one calling the shots, making the important decisions. The momentum of frenzied adrenaline was surging in my blood. I suppose in retrospect, I was out of control. It was perhaps the first time I had experienced this sensation. I am at the whim of my abandon. I am an assassin. I am an assassin. And there is something running around out there in the body of my ex-fiancé, which is pure evil. And it's my duty to eliminate it. I must begin. Stalking him was easier than I thought. With invincibility on my side, I was sure to be successful with my confrontation with this particular strain of evil, for I too had become evil. Watching his routine from the safety of shadows, I quickly became familiar with his comings and goings. He was almost predictable. I had scoped out a possible location for the confrontation. Sharply lit, contrasty, theatrical. Timing was still the remaining consideration. I caught unexpected sight of him. I pursued him silently. I could smell him. He was so close. My vision was tunnel, focused exclusively on the task at hand. He had slipped behind a wall in an alley of all luck. Yet he was still out of sight. All I had to do was clear the corner of the building where he would be in plain sight. I think he must be urinating in the alley. Why else would he be loitering there? My fingers began to sweat on my pistol outfitted with a silencer, and I could feel its weight becoming heavier with each step towards the edge of the building. Just a few more steps, gun drawn. Steady, for God's sakes, just a few more steps and it'll all be over. That instant, my nerve broke. Something was wrong. I had to calm myself. I was sweating, second-guessing. One more step. Out he pounced in front of me. He too had a gun pointed right at me, mine at him. We were silent in that deadlock for an eternity. Then I understood the setup. I wondered if we were being filmed as some bizarre case study of some kind. He held his gun, steadily pointed at me, and I wondered, why didn't he shoot? I slowly lowered my gun and held his eyes. And I gestured to him to wait a second while I fumbled through my pockets of my oversized cloak. And I withdrew a tiny, perfectly round tangerine and handed it to him. I then turned and walked away.